Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. If we're meeting for the first time, I'm an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I do this through one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And you can learn more at my website, illuminatingsouls.com. But for now, the angels and I are here to help you come into a lovely state of rest. As I record this, it is the early morning. The sun is about to come up. And my husband and I were just talking this morning about this bird who has taken up residence in a tree across the street. And this bird has a lot to say and sings and chatters as the sun comes up. My husband was sharing with me that when he walks out to his car to go to work in the morning, he talks to the bird. He chirps at the bird, and the bird sings back to him. And so just so you know, at some point in the next hour, because that's how long this episode will be, you may get to hear the bird as well. Little extra ambience for your listening pleasure. But in this moment, things are quiet. And I love the quiet. As I've grown older, I have somehow slipped into a circadian rhythm that seems to match my father's. My father used to go to sleep early. He just couldn't keep his eyes open past a certain hour. But then he would be awake at 4 or 5 in the morning, and he would shower early before the sun came up and get ready to go to the office. And I used to wonder about this because I was at the age when I loved to sleep in. I certainly went through my teenage years, my adolescence, when sleeping until noon was awesome. I can't even imagine that now. And my dad used to say he loved the early mornings because it was so quiet. And he loved to watch the sun come up. So I'm thinking of my dad at this quiet hour as the sky just begins to lighten ever so slowly. And probably the next time I notice the sky, the sun will be up. And it's a beautiful metaphor for life, you know. Life changes sometimes slowly and sometimes very quickly. And I have no idea where to go from there. I do not have a profound follow-up to that little pearl of wisdom. So instead, let's talk about you and your angels and how to use this podcast. So I'm someone who listens to a sleep podcast every night. It helps me bridge my waking consciousness to that place where I slip off into sleep. I am fortunate that for the most part, I am someone that easily falls asleep. And I do know that some of you struggle with this. So here is my hope, that this podcast will provide you with a soothing, loving, sweet space, and that we can keep you company as you go about your day or as you prepare to drift off. I find that it is helpful for me when I listen to a sleep podcast to turn the volume down lower than I would if I were listening to an audiobook. There's something about the murmurs and the mumbling that make it easier for me to drift off because there isn't something demanding my attention. It's just something that I can reach for until that beautiful mystery of sleep finds me. I also use sleep podcasts when I wake up at 3 a.m, which I sometimes do. I think probably because I go to sleep at 8 o'clock, but when it's one of those 3 a.m. wake-up calls from the universe, I put my earphones in and I will listen to another sleep podcast. Sometimes I fall asleep, sometimes I don't, but at least it keeps me company and it keeps my mind from getting too busy. I do what I can to avoid the racing thoughts and trying to figure everything out at 3 a.m. I'd much prefer the company of a good story and a sweet voice keeping me company. There are a couple of different sleep podcasts that I listen to, and yes, I listen to this one as well, and it puts me to sleep, so yay for that. I have created something that also helps me, which is nice. One of my favorites is called Sleepy, and the host is Otis Gray. In his latest episode, he's reading from the book Emily of the New Moon by Lucy Maud Montgomery. And I've tried reading the book. I don't really remember what it's about. And even though I've listened to that episode, I still can't tell you what it's about because as soon as I hear his voice, I'm out. He's got this very rich, soothing tone because sometimes we need different voices, right? It may be that you've come to love my podcast, which would be a lovely thought if you love it. I'll be a little self-serving for a moment. And that maybe you don't want to sleep during my podcast because you found that I'm a better companion for you when you're awake. So I highly recommend the podcast Sleepy by Otis Gray. He releases a new episode every Sunday. And he typically reads from a different book each Sunday. So it's not serialized where you listen for 10 episodes while he reads you an entire book. But if you do like that idea, another one of my favorite podcasts is Sleepy Bookshelf. The narrator's name is Elizabeth, and I don't know her last name. The thing about that podcast is I have to like the book that she's reading. So I really loved when she read Jane Eyre, Little Women, Anne of Green Gables, Pride and Prejudice. So if I'm really into the book that she's reading, then it's phenomenal for me. But sometimes she reads a book that I don't care much about, and so I just don't tune in until that book is over. But what's lovely about it is if she is reading a book that you enjoy, there can be a dozen or more episodes. So lots of good stuff out there to help you fall asleep. But here in this podcast, I bring to you a beautiful blend of angelic light because I love the angels and I find their energy to be very compatible with sleep and rest. and then I tell you stories or I read to you. It's a lovely blend. So how about if I bring the angels in now? I love the ritual of sharing them with you. And they're already here. But let's just take some nice deep breaths in together, just calling ourselves gently into the heart of God. And just take a nice deep breath in all the way down your solar plexus and releasing. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here. And I ask that you infuse this session with waves of love, waves of light and waves of healing in service to each of our beloveds who are with us now. Angels, I ask that you bring forward sparks of inspiration and goodness and blessings. And I ask that you help to clear from us anything that does not belong to us, anything that no longer serves our highest and best good. And dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in and just imagine, visualize, allow it to be so, that the space you are in is filling with a soft pink light. And this light is filled with love that has been calibrated just for you. This love is the antidote to whatever is troubling you. It will help to infuse your energy field with a lightness of spirit, with wisdom, and most importantly, with love. And all you have to do right now is to simply be and do your best to receive. You have done enough for this day. And you are worthy of receiving this love. And just breathe. And just allow this soft light to breathe into you as it comes to every cell of your body, every thought in your mind, and every emotion in your heart. And this beautiful light also can travel and visit those you love. So the angels will ripple this love to those in your heart. And we will include them in our prayers. So just allow yourself to be present as your angels say prayers on your behalf. They know what is in your heart, and they know what is transpiring in your life, and they are here to support you. They love you so dearly. They know who you are, and they are here to support you and help you on your life's path. You're doing much better than you know, and you truly are a blessing in this world. And we are so deeply grateful for you. So take another deep breath in, allowing yourself to receive this love, this acknowledgement, this reminder of who you are as a divine being in human form. So just breathe and allow yourself to be in this beautiful space of sanctuary that the angels are creating for you. And as you rest, the angels will continue infusing you with love, bringing to you inspiration and light. They're saying a prayer for brighter tomorrows for you and for those that you love. I love that concept of brighter tomorrows. I always do my best to pivot in that direction. That somewhere on the horizon are brighter tomorrows that are calling out to us. So I wish you dreams of brighter tomorrows and the sweetest of light. And so you go ahead and rest. And while you rest, I'm going to ramble and meander and keep you company by reading to you and sharing with you some stories. So for this episode, I have another recipe book to share with you. And it is not lost on me that the last episode was the Plus Size Diaries. And this episode is going to be an ode to Jewish cooking. But welcome to my life. And I have shared with you before that this podcast and preparing for it and contemplating what I want to share in the episodes has led me to this love of community cookbooks. And what a community cookbook is women, mostly women, sometimes men, if they were part of a temple sisterhood or a church group or a parent-teacher association, where women would gather, they would create these recipe books where the women would contribute recipes. And then they would publish it as a fundraiser. More often than not, they're spiral bound. And what I love so much about them is that it's a snapshot to how these women cooked. They weren't professional chefs. These are not recipes that are tried out in test kitchens. You know, if you're going to get an Ina Garden cookbook, you know what you're getting, right? These recipes have been tested. You know what her flavor profiles are. But these community cookbooks, they're really a reflection of how most women, at least here in America, and I should say that the ones that I read so far are from the U.S., how they were cooking back in the day. A can of this, a little bit of that. And I just find it fascinating, and it warms my heart because this was the way my mom cooked. You know, this was an era where I just shared this statistic in the TV Guide episode from 1963, that in 1963 or around that time, only 30% of women were in the workforce. So many women were home cooking 3 meals a day, because back then, this particular cookbook is from 1965. For most of us, we were not running out and eating fast food or DoorDash, which didn't exist every day. Meals were made at home for the most part. And so I have just found a great love for these kinds of cookbooks. I have a lot of them to go through with you, so this podcast, Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, not this episode, but we can be together for years because I have collected quite a few of these with the intention of sharing them with you. So this one is called Eater's Digest. It is actually the latest one I've gotten. It just got delivered this week. And it's from Temple Shalom Sisterhood in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it was published in 1965. They do share that the rabbi there is Harry B. Pastor. The congregation president is Harry Sampson. The men's club president is Gerald Kahn. And the sisterhood president is Mrs. James Pask. So back in 1965, more often than not, women were known as Mrs. and then their husband's name, which I find fascinating. So I would be Mrs. Wesley Maffei, which sounds very strange to me. Before they get to the recipes, they include some kitchen ideas, some helpful hints, if you will. So they say, try waxing your ashtrays. Ashes won't cling, odors won't linger. And then they can be wiped clean with a paper towel or disposable tissue. This saves daily washing. And I do remember when my parents would have ashtrays in the home when they entertained. My parents didn't smoke, but they might have a guest who did, and so we would have ashtrays. Which, I don't know how many of you smoke, but I do not. I do not own an ashtray. I wouldn't even know where to get one. To remove burned food from the oven, place a small cloth saturated with ammonia in the oven overnight, and food can be easily wiped up. Potatoes soaked in salt water for 20 minutes before baking will bake more rapidly. I didn't know that one. For quick and handy seasoning while cooking, keep on hand a large shaker containing 6 parts salt and 1 part pepper. And in all likelihood, Trader Joe's will have a blend of just that sooner rather than later. Breadcrumbs added to scrambled eggs will improve the flavor and make larger helpings possible. Sweet potatoes will not turn dark if put in salted water, 5 teaspoons to 1 quart of water immediately after peeling. And there's about 5 more of those, but we'll just keep going to the recipes because that's what we're really here for. So we are in the section called appetizers, pickles, and salads. Pickles seem to be having a glory day right about now. I don't know if you guys are into pickles, but pickles, I grew up with pickles being Jewish, right? A good kosher dill. I am partial to new pickles. And a new pickle is a pickle that hasn't been fermenting as long. I love new pickles. Okay, well, let's start food memories, yes? That's why we're here. There's a place in New Jersey. I went to a spiritualist church in New Jersey. I traveled there for a mediumship class, a workshop, which was wonderful, by the way. But as I've shared with you, I am heavily imprinted in food. And there was like a hamburger stand. They had other sandwiches and stuff where we would go for lunch and you could get your own pickles. And they had these new pickle chips, which were the best thing I've ever had. To this day, I think about those pickle chips. So I am all for a good pickle. I am a new pickle girl, however. I prefer them to the very dilled ones. Okay, and we will get to pickles, but first I must start with the first recipe in the book, broiled grapefruit. Now the thing about the 60s and 70s is grapefruit was a big deal. Grapefruit is what you ate if you wanted to be thin. I can't even tell you how many grapefruits I had for breakfast back in the day. We would cut them in half. There was a special grapefruit knife and a grapefruit spoon. The grapefruit knife helped to take the section away from the membrane, and the grapefruit spoon was serrated on the edges so you could get the wedge out. They were great if you poured sugar on top, but of course, being a perpetual dieter, we used sweet and low. So I ate a half a grapefruit in my day for breakfast and then wondered why I was hungry an hour later. But this is not that kind of grapefruit because it will involve butter and sugar. So definitely not Laurel's Diet grapefruit breakfast. So here we're going to have 2 medium grapefruit, 4 teaspoons of granulated sugar, 8 teaspoons of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of butter, and 4 tablespoons of sherry, which is optional. So all I'm hearing is sugar and butter with a little bit of grapefruit. So cut grapefruit in halves crosswise, remove the seeds, then insert scissors or sharp knife under the center core and cut it free from grapefruit and discard. Next, loosen flesh sections by cutting around each section with a sharp knife or grapefruit knife. See, I told you they existed. Along the membrane and skin. And then sprinkle each half with 1 teaspoon of granulated sugar and 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. Dot each with 1.5 teaspoons of butter and broil for 10 minutes or until golden brown. Just before serving, pour 1 tablespoon of sherry over each half and serve hot. Nothing about that sounds good to me. But I can appreciate that they found a way to repurpose grapefruit in a way so that it would be a carrier, a vessel, if you will, for sugar and butter, which is brilliant. And it does not tell us who created this recipe. I will say, while I don't eat grapefruit anymore because I have a really hard time with citrus and acidic foods, I do have a special love for a pomelo. If you've never had a pomelo and you see it in the grocery store, get it. They look really big, but a huge part of the pomelo is the rind. So typically the fruit inside is not as big as represented by the size of the entire fruit when you get it from the store. And you also peel off the membrane, but it's a much sweeter grapefruit, if you will. I love a pomelo, but I can't eat a whole one, but I have one actually right now ripening in my kitchen because I really just wanted a taste of one because I love them so much. This being a Jewish cookbook from the 1960s, there is a recipe for chopped herring, which I will not read to you. All I will tell you is chopped herring was a thing. My parents loved it. I never ate it, so I can give you no editorial commentary other than just the idea of it did not appeal to me ever. There's something called tuna fish balls, which, again, some kind of appetizer, which does not sound good to me. They do have crab meat dip, which tells me that this is a Reformed synagogue, because in conservative and Orthodox synagogues, they would not eat shellfish. So anytime I see shellfish in one of these Jewish Sisterhood recipe books, I know that it's a Reformed congregation. They do have a cheese appetizer that involves ripe olives, blue cheese, cream cheese, butter. Well, everything about that sounds good. Okay, this recipe to me sounds very 1960s. Toasted mushroom canapes. 1 loaf of sliced white bread, butter, 1 8-ounce package of cream cheese, half a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, a dash of garlic salt, a dash of onion salt, 2 raw beaten egg yolks, and 1 small jar of drained and chopped mushrooms. What I remember about that time was we often would use a jar or can of mushrooms. We didn't seem to have access to fresh mushrooms back then. Or maybe they were available, but my mom never used them. So when they talk about a jar of mushrooms, I can still taste them and see them in my mind's eye. So cut bread into rounds with a juice glass or a cookie cutter. How many of you remember that? Take a jelly glass and you'd put that on a piece of bread and cut out a round. Melt butter in pan and toast rounds on both sides. Soften cream cheese, add Worcestershire sauce, garlic and onion salt, egg yolks and mushrooms. Mix and spread on toasted rounds and put under broiler before serving until lightly brown. Can be frozen and popped into the oven. A very 1960s recipe. And then there is a kosher dill pickle recipe in here. So 8 to 10 2 or 3 inch cucumbers, 2 cloves of garlic sliced, 1 teaspoon of pickling spices, 2 sprigs of dill, 1 tablespoon of coarse salt, and cold water. So you wash the cucumbers and place upright in a jar. Put 1 sprig of dill and half of spices on top. Then add the second layer of cucumbers. Add the rest of the dill and spices and salt. Cover with cold water from tap. Seal and shake jar to distribute the salt. And it says nothing about how long to keep them until they are kosher dills. I do make my own new pickles, and I find that if I leave them in the fridge for a couple of days, they take on all the flavor and they're quite delicious. And here's another classic that I would imagine if you are of my generation, you have had some variation of that, even if it was called something different. Colorful ribbon salad. 2 packages of lime gelatin, 1 package lemon gelatin, half a cup of marshmallows cut up in small pieces, 1 8-ounce package of cream cheese, 1 cup of heavy cream or Dream Whip, or probably what we would think of now as Cool Whip, 2 packages of cherry gelatin. So at this point, we've got 5 packages of gelatin, 1 cup of hot water, 1 can of number 2 crushed pineapple drained. Can you already see this in your mind's eye? And 1 cup of salad dressing or mayonnaise. Basically, you're going to be layering everything. I won't read the whole thing to you, but it involves a lot of layers. So, this is an ode to every amazing Jell-O layer salad we have ever had, and the truth about how long it took to make these. They were an endeavor because each layer had to have its own attention and its own opportunity to chill. So that's what this is. And then I want to introduce you to its cousin, which would be the frozen fruit salad. Now, let me share with you what's in it. Should you be thinking this could be something healthy? Of course it is not. Although, in my child's mind, I would have thought, it's a fruit salad. What's bad about that? It's fruit in a salad. It must be good for me. But here's what's in it. 2 8-ounce packages of cream cheese. Because, of course, right? 1 cup of whipped cream. Half a cup of red maraschino cherries quartered. And who in childhood did not love a maraschino cherry? Right? They were brilliant. 1 can, which would be 2.5 cups, crushed pineapple drained. Crushed pineapple was a really big thing then. We didn't really have access to fresh very often. 1 cup of salad dressing or mayonnaise. So when they say salad dressing, they're not talking about blue cheese or something like that. Often mayonnaise and salad dressing were synonymous back then. Half a cup of green maraschino cherries quartered. Right, I don't even remember getting to have green maraschino cherries, but I'm sure they were just as delightful as the red. And 24 diced marshmallows. So basically, the only fruit that really could be considered fruit, because the maraschino cherries, for all intents and purposes, they're candy, is the pineapple. But so you combine the softened cheese and mayonnaise, blend until smooth, fold in cream, fruit, and marshmallows, and pour into a refrigerator tray or mold and freeze firm. Serves 8. I would have easily eaten this, thinking, it's fruit. It's good for you, right? Of course it is. And since we're on this theme, I bring to you frozen pineapple pecan salad, the juice of 2 lemons, 2 eggs, so there'll be a little bit of protein in this for you. A half a teaspoon of dry mustard. Okay, this is not sounding good to me. It's savory. There's a savoriness to it, and I do not like savory in my sweet. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 30 marshmallows. So I may have been able to endure this because of the sweetness of the marshmallows. Again, your can of crushed pineapple or tidbits. You could have gotten the tidbits. 1 cup of pecans and 1 cup of cream whipped. So on the top of a double boiler, so back in the day, we would have double boilers. These days, I do not have one. We have a microwave. Put the lemon juice, slightly beaten eggs, mustard, and salt. Okay, so I couldn't do that in the microwave, but I would probably just float a bowl over some boiling water and cook until thickened. Add marshmallows and stir until melted. So the marshmallows are going to be melted. Okay, so that could be good. Cool. Add pineapple and pecans, add whipped cream. Pour into 2 freezing trays, freeze for 5 hours, cut in squares, and serve on a bed of watercress. Beautiful. I would have eaten it anyways, and I would probably have pretended not to taste the mustard just to get to the marshmallow cream cheese or whipped cream goodness. All right, I skipped right over the main courses because those tend to be very meat-centric, and I try not to share that with you because I know that many of you are vegetarians or vegans. So, just so you know, I skip over that stuff. There is something called cheese knishes, which sounds great. It's 1 pound of dry ground cottage cheese, which is not that creamy cottage cheese we get in the store. 1 tablespoon of sour cream, a pinch of salt, 1 egg, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Okay, so this is what I love about these recipes. It says, use butterhorn dough. We're assuming, as a housewife of 1965, you know exactly what we're talking about. Laurel in 2023 has no idea, but I do have my friend Google, so let's see what that is. Okay, I have a better understanding now thanks to Google. I believe what they're referring to would be the equivalent here in the US of what we know of as like the Pillsbury crescent rolls that come in the tube. I don't know that this came in the tube. I don't know how they were made available to women back then, but I think that's what we're using. So some sort of pre-made dough. So cut the dough in squares. Fill with 1 teaspoon of filling, form into triangle, pinching the edges. Let rise for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Bake at 350 degrees for 20 minutes on ungreased cookie sheet. Serve warm with sour cream. Well, it sounds good. There's also a recipe for cheese blintzes. I love cheese blintzes. Now, I would just probably buy the frozen ones from Trader Joe's, but they have sugar in them, so I probably am not going to get them. But that's what I would have. I would have never made them from scratch. But I'll skip the recipe, but I will just wax poetic for a moment about the brilliance of a good cheese blintz because they are phenomenal. And we're going to segue on over to the vegetable section. This is brilliant. Again, totally a 1965 recipe. Green pea and broccoli casserole. 2 packages of frozen green peas, 1 small package of Velveeta cheese, a half a cup to 1 cup of crushed cheese Ritz crackers, and 2 packages of frozen cut up broccoli. I can see this in my mind's eye. In all likelihood, they were in those little frozen boxes, as opposed to the plastic bags things come into today. So cook vegetables according to directions, which would have been on the stove because in 1965 we did not have microwaves for the most part. Drain well. Cut cheese into cubes and heat with drained vegetables until cheese is melted. Pour into 1.5 quart casserole. Sprinkle crushed cracker crumbs on top. Bake at 325 degrees for 45 minutes to an hour. Now, what's bad about that? You get Velveeta and Ritz crackers with some vegetables in it. As a kid, total hit it out of the park where I'm concerned, and I would have thought I was being healthy because I was eating my vegetables. God bless my heart. I was very confused about food back then. Okay, now we're getting into territory that I loved. This is a carrot ring, which I'm sure must have been very similar to my Aunt Jane's carrot pudding, which I loved her carrot pudding. I do not know what was in it except for sugar, butter, love, and magic. It was brilliant. And I thought it was healthy because it was carrot pudding, right? You start something with carrot pudding, carrot cake. It's healthy. It's a vegetable, right? That's what I thought back then. Okay, but it doesn't matter if it's healthy or not. It's delicious. So here we go. Carrot ring. 1 cup of shortening. Half a cup of brown sugar. 3 eggs. 1.5 cups of raw grated carrots. Half a teaspoon of salt. 1 cup of flour. 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Half a teaspoon of baking soda. 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. 1 tablespoon of cold water, and breadcrumbs. So cream shortening with sugar. Add yolks, grated carrots, and salt. Sift dry ingredients and add lemon juice and cold water. Beat egg whites and fold in, so there is going to be some airiness to this. Pour into a greased 9-inch ring mold, which has been generously sprinkled with breadcrumbs. Sprinkle more breadcrumbs on top. Set in a pan of water and bake in a 350-degree oven for 15 minutes, and then in a 375-degree oven for 35 to 40 more minutes. I promise you this would be delicious, but I will not make it. I will just continue to bask in my memories of my Aunt Jane's carrot pudding. Okay, this sounds terrible, but I will share it with you because, again, indicative of how women cooked back then. Cauliflower Italian. Before you get excited that this is like a Nonna Pia kind of recipe that will be delicious, let me assure you it will not be. It is 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of flour, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of canned tomatoes, 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder or minced dehydrated garlic, 1 package of frozen cauliflower cooked and drained, and half a small green pepper. Again, back in the day, we weren't getting fresh cauliflower. I don't remember having fresh cauliflower until I was in college, I think. So melt butter and flour, salt and garlic, stir until smooth. Add tomatoes and cook, stirring constantly until sauce has thickened. Add green pepper and cauliflower. Either mix it all together or serve by pouring the sauce over the cauliflower. Nothing about that sounds good to me. I like cauliflower, butter, flour, salt, tomatoes, like everything individually sounds good to me, but mixing it together in this way does not. But that's me. Maybe this brings back good memories for you, so perhaps I should not be so harsh on this. Okay, well, here is a very simple and profoundly delicious recipe. German fried potatoes. Okay, fried potatoes, I'm in. I'm all in. Fried sweet potatoes, fried white potatoes, anything that involves fried and potatoes, I'm in. And the ingredients are simple. 5 medium large potatoes and a quarter cup. Look at me, I'm already inflating the amount of butter in this recipe. A quarter cup of butter or fat. So peel the potatoes and slice as thin as possible. Melt butter in a large skillet and arrange the potatoes evenly over the fat. Cover tightly and cook over low heat until the bottom is brown, about 12 minutes. Turn over, cover once more, and cook until tender, about 12 minutes longer. Serves 5. Or 1. or 2, because I would definitely share it with Wes. I would share it with my husband. Okay, you know what? This reminds me. I have 2 bags of the little golden potatoes from Trader Joe's in my refrigerator that I forgot to make. And Wes and I found this recipe on YouTube somewhere, and what you do is you cut the potatoes up. So these I would probably cut in half because they're very small, and you boil them in salted water with some baking soda in it, just until they're parboiled. And then you take them out of the water and you turn the oven up really high, like 425 or 450. And then you put spices, whatever you like, garlic, turmeric, whatever you like, over the potatoes with a lot of butter and olive oil, right? What's bad about this? And then you put them on a baking sheet and you put them in the really hot oven and you keep turning them over every 7 minutes so they get super, super crispy. And they are delightful. So that just reminded me, I can make those this weekend. Yay, there are fried potatoes in my future. And of course, I have to share with you a potato kugel recipe. I do recognize the brilliance of a savory kugel, but I am so in love with a sweet kugel that I just can't ever get past that. But I'm going to read it to you, so we can at least, in our imaginations, pay tribute to a savory kugel. So 3 eggs slightly beaten, 1 teaspoon of grated onion, a quarter cup of matzo meal, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, a dash of pepper, 1 cooked potato mashed, 5 large potatoes peeled and grated or ground fine, half a cup of shortening. Mix together the eggs, onion, matzo meal, baking powder, salt, and pepper. Combine mashed and grated potatoes. Mix with egg mixture. Place shortening, we're just going to say in a pan. They give me all the measurements, but it's long. But you put it in a pan. If you're really going to make this recipe and you need to know the pan measurements, email me. I'll hook you up. Set in oven at 350 degrees until shortening is melted and pan is hot. Pour potato mixture into pan. Bake for 1 hour or until brown crust is formed on top. Serves 6. Cut in squares and serve with meat. We don't have to do that though if you're a vegetarian. We can serve it with just more potatoes. Why not? We're all adults here. We can eat as many potatoes as we want. Now we have come to the muffin section of the cookbook. I love a good muffin. Alas, I can no longer eat them because just about every muffin is made with sugar. And muffins are one of those gateway foods for me because I think somehow in the back of my brain that a muffin is healthy. And listen, I don't want to get into this whole idea of healthy and unhealthy food, so no shame if you eat muffins. I'm just saying, for me, muffins lead to cookies and cakes. So I no longer eat muffins, but I love a good muffin. So I'm going to read you some recipes. Since I can't actually eat them, I'll at least share them with you. So a Stay Fresh banana muffin. I love banana muffins and banana cake. What's bad about that, right? Unless you don't like bananas, in which case we'll figure out how to do something with blueberries for you, perhaps. Okay, so Stay Fresh banana muffins. 1.5 cups of cake flour, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 cup of butter, which is half a stick. They're kindly reminding us. 1 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of sour cream, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1 cup of mashed bananas, which is probably 3 to 4, although we have giant bananas these days, so it could be less. 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and 1 egg. And you mix it all together. You don't need me to tell you that part because you're really not going to be making these, but that's what's in these. We also have cherry muffins, which sound fantastic, which has 2 cups of sifted flour. You know what? I'm not going to go through all the ingredients, but the best part of it is a heaping cup of frozen cherries, and then there's also butter and sugar. Delicious. Oatmeal nut muffins. Again, like, I came with a generation that thought bran muffins were healthy. Do you guys remember when bran muffins were a big thing? And I thought I was healthy if I got a bran muffin. It's bran. It's good for you. I think one of those transition times that shocked, I was going to say something rude, but I won't, but that shocked the stuffing out of me was when restaurants and bakeries in California, and maybe this is a nationwide thing, I don't know, or an international thing, had to start putting calories next to what they were serving. And I found out that a muffin, or the muffins I liked, were somewhere between 400 and 600 calories. I was horrified. I was like, what are you talking about? It's just a muffin. And bran muffins, very high in calories. Again, I'm not here to vilify any food. I'm just saying, as someone who grew up eating half a grapefruit with some sweet and low on top of it and called it breakfast, that I had been so hyper vigilant about trying to eat only healthy food to discover that the muffin might as well be a piece of chocolate cake shocked me. We also have some pie in this section, so it must be the muffin and pie section, perhaps. This one sounds delicious to me. Of course, I will not be making it. Cherry cheese pie. It's like cherry cheesecake. Yum. 18 graham crackers, 1/3 cup of butter or oleo, which is margarine, 1/2 cup of sugar, which can be omitted. But why at this point? Why? One 8-ounce package of cream cheese, 1/2 cup of sugar. They don't say that one should be omitted though. 2 eggs, and 1 can of cherry or raspberry pie filling. Now, if you've ever cooked with cherry pie filling, you know how much sugar is in that, right? It's not like you've gotten a basket of Bing cherries or Rainier cherries from the grocery store and you have pitted them and chopped them up. Oh no, these come in this decadent, syrupy, sugary, delicious goodness. So we're going to crush the crackers, melt butter, and add to crumbs and sugar. Mix well. Pat the mixture on the bottom of a 9-inch pie pan firmly. Firmly, do not be gentle about this. Bring cream cheese to room temperature. Beat until smooth. Beat in 1/2 cup of sugar gradually. Add eggs, 1 at a time. beating hard after each addition. Beat well until mixture is very smooth. Pour over crumbs and bake 25 minutes at 325 degrees. Remove from oven and cool, and spoon the filling over the top. Chill in refrigerator 3 hours or overnight. Can be frozen. And I do have to say, my mom, Phyllis, made the most delicious cheesecake with cherries on top. And her cheesecake was light and fluffy. So it wasn't dense like a New York cheesecake. It was light and fluffy, and then it would have the canned cherries on top. It was delicious. So, ode to my mother's beautiful cheesecake. And then there is a frozen lemon pie. Now, I have to say, I was never a lemon girl. Like lemon profile things, I do like a lemon poppy seed muffin. And I really think I'm in it more for the muffin than for the lemon. But I will share this with you because perhaps you love lemon things. So this is 2 eggs separated, half a cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of grated lemon rind, 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, 1 cup of heavy cream whipped, and 1 cup crushed graham cracker crumbs. So you beat the egg yolks with a rotary beater until fluffy. Oh my God, I'm just remembering now. Those rotary egg beaters, do you remember? And that was always the kids' job, to beat the eggs. Beating until light and lemon colored. Oh, you're adding the sugar to the egg yolks. And continue beating until light and lemon colored. Place over boiling water and cook, heating constantly until very thick, which will take about 3 minutes. Remove from heat, add lemon juice and rind. Fold in stiffly beaten egg whites, then fold in whipped cream. Spread about 2/3 of the graham cracker crumbs evenly over the bottom of ice cube tray. Okay, that's interesting. Cover with lemon mixture and sprinkle with remaining crumbs. Freeze until firm without stirring, about 3 hours. That would be refreshing, yes? And then we'll wrap up. We still have not really got into the cake and cookies. There's still easily another third of the book to get through. But I'm going to wrap things up with a good pound cake recipe. I loved pound cake. There was always a Sara Lee pound cake in my parents' freezer. We had a big freezer that was down in the basement. So my mom would go to the Sara Lee outlet store and stock up. So I have a very fond memory of pound cake. I don't believe my mother ever made her own. I mean, I don't mean ever, but most of my pound cake memories come courtesy of Sara Lee and that lovely aluminum pound cake pan, and you would uncrimp the edges and take off the cardboard top, and there would be the glorious pound cake from Sara Lee. But in case you want to make your own, 1 pound of butter, 1 pound of powdered sugar, 6 eggs, 3 cups of flour, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Mix all of the ingredients together until well blended. Beat well, about 4 to 5 minutes. Bake in an ungreased tube pan in 350-degree oven for 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 hours. This cake will split on top during the baking process, but do not remove from oven until the cake is finished. And you can add nuts or chocolate chips or currants. So, here's to a good pound cake and Sara Lee. And I don't know how many of you have ever heard Liza Minnelli sing the song Sara Lee. It's brilliant. And if you want to smile today, go on to YouTube or your favorite music app and search for Liza Minnelli and Sara Lee and listen to a truly delightful song, performed brilliantly as only Liza Minnelli can do. And seeing as how I also had a love affair with Sara Lee, that song made me so happy when I heard it. And you know what I'll do? I'm going to read you the lyrics. I can't play the song because, I'll get in trouble with the algorithm of whatever that means somewhere out in the world of copyrights and fair use and all of that stuff. But this is how the song starts. There's a lady living somewhere. Where it is, I do not know. But I long to write and tell her that I love her so. Sara Lee, your brioche just fractures me. Give me a taste of your cherry Danish. I love my mother, but you cannot compare, not with Sara Lee. Okay, I'm not doing it justice. You'll probably think that's a dumb song, and I'm not going to listen to it, Laurel, but I promise you, it's a brilliant song. And have a listen. All right, well, there you go. We have come to the end of our hour or so of togetherness, where we have taken a journey down memory lane into the 1960s recipes that Jewish women in Middle America were making. Perhaps by now you are asleep, or you have a very strange craving for a food you typically never eat, and if that is the case, I am so sorry. We'll ask the angels to clear that for you. So I wish you, my beautiful friend, I wish you the sweetest of dreams. I wish you blessings of light. I am so grateful. Thank you for listening and for allowing me the blessing of keeping you company. We'll talk again soon. I love you. Thank you.